Rain hammered against the bus window as Ethan Cole stared at the blurred city lights outside. 35 years old, shirt wrinkled, tie half undone, he looked like every other man heading home after another long day of pretending to be fine. His reflection in the glass asked the question he'd been dodging for years, is this it? The bus jolted to a stop near his apartment complex, a gray building with broken mailboxes and a vending machine that ate dollars. He stepped into the drizzle, shoulders hunched. Every step echoed the same rhythm: job, rent, bills, repeat. He'd done everything society told him: college, degree, steady employment, yet something inside him felt like a leaky boat taking on water. Slowly. Silently. Inside his small apartment, the clock ticked loud in the quiet. On the wall hung a dusty guitar he hadn't touched in 8 years. Music had been his childhood dream, but dreams didn't pay electricity bills, at least that's what he'd told himself. Tonight, the silence pressed harder. He turned on the TV for company, but the screen showed a rerun of some motivational talk show. A gray-haired host asked, "Do you know what the most expensive thing in life is?" Ethan muttered, "Yeah, rent." But then the voice on screen continued, "It's not money. It's comfort." That line hit him like a slap. He tried to laugh it off, but the words sank deep. Comfort, his tiny routine that felt safe but had quietly stolen his spark. He turned off the TV and sat still, staring at the old guitar. His fingers twitched. Then his phone buzzed, a message from his manager: "Don't be late tomorrow. Big inspection." He sighed. Even his phone knew how to chain him. The next morning, Ethan's alarm rang at 6 a.m. He stared at the ceiling, thinking about quitting, not today, not ever, but in some fantasy where courage didn't feel like a luxury. He dragged himself to the office anyway. Fluorescent lights flickered. Coffee smelled burnt. Co-workers talked about the latest Netflix show while pretending to care about spreadsheets. "Morning, Ethan," said Claire from accounting, handing him a donut. "Sugar helps survive this place." He smiled weakly. "I'm surviving, not living." "Big difference," she replied, but her tone was hollow too. At noon, his boss, Mr. Hargrove, the kind of man who smiled only when cutting budgets, called him in. "Cole, good work on last quarter. We're restructuring. Same workload, less overtime pay. Be flexible, okay?" Ethan nodded, the same way a tree nods in a storm, because it has no choice. On his lunch break, he walked outside, past construction workers covered in sweat, past a kid selling lemonade for $1, and past a street musician strumming blues on a cracked guitar. Something about the tune stopped him. It was raw, imperfect, alive. The man sang. "Comfort is a cage, painted like a home." Ethan's chest tightened. That was his life in one lyric. The guitarist caught his stare. "You play?" Ethan shook his head. "Used to." "Then you still do. You just forgot how to remember." That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He sat by the window, watching city lights flicker like dying fireflies. He thought of people who never stayed safe: Elon Musk sleeping in factories, Colonel Sanders at 65 knocking on doors, even his late father who once quit his job to start a small farm. It hadn't made them rich, but it had made them alive. And then he thought of himself, an Excel soldier with a steady paycheck and a dying soul. By dawn, something inside him snapped, quietly but irreversibly. He opened his laptop and typed "how to start a music channel." Tutorials, forums, stories, one video led to another. Each one screamed the same truth: failure hurts less than regret. He pulled out his old guitar, brushed off the dust, and tuned it. The first string broke. He laughed, a real, painful laugh, the kind that comes from remembering who you used to be. For the next few days, Ethan went to work by day and recorded songs by night. His apartment became a chaos of wires, coffee cups, and half-written lyrics. His neighbors banged on the wall. His boss noticed his distraction. Even Claire said, "You look tired." "I'm alive," he said, smiling for the first time in years. Weeks passed. He uploaded his first video, a rough cover of Ain't No Sunshine. 5 views. 2 likes. 1 comment from someone named Skyline Dreamer: Your voice has soul. Don't stop. That single line felt like oxygen. But Comfort doesn't give up easily. His boss soon offered a promotion, more money, better title, heavier chains. You've earned this, Ethan, said Hargrove, shaking his hand. Ethan smiled politely, but inside, war raged. Take the offer and stay safe, or risk everything on a guitar and a dream. That night, he stood on his balcony, staring at the city below. The words from that old TV show echoed again, comfort is the most expensive thing in life. He looked at his cracked fingertips, his cheap microphone, his half-finished song. Then he whispered, let's find out what discomfort costs. He opened his laptop, wrote his resignation letter, and hit send. Outside, thunder rolled loud, uninviting, electric. But for the first time in years, Ethan smiled into the storm. The next morning, Ethan woke up to silence, the kind of silence that's both terrifying and beautiful. No alarm. No messages from Hargrove. No reason to wear a tie. The world felt bigger and emptier all at once. For years, he'd built his life around other people's schedules. Now, for the first time, he had to build it around himself. He brewed coffee and stared at his resignation letter still glowing on the screen. There was no going back. Fear crept in, the rent, the bills, the possibility of failure. His mind whispered, what if you just made the biggest mistake of your life? But then he glanced at his guitar resting on the chair like an old friend finally forgiven. He strummed once. The sound wasn't perfect, but it was real. He picked up his notebook and wrote the title, The Cost of Comfort. It wasn't just a song anymore, it was his story. The first few weeks were chaos. His small savings began to thin out fast. His channel barely grew. Some videos got 10 views, some none at all. He'd record at 2 a.m., edit till sunrise, then crash on the couch. The people around him started to talk. Claire called one evening. Ethan, are you okay? Everyone at work says you lost it. He smiled. Yeah, I guess I did. I lost fear. You were good at your job. I was great at surviving, he said. But I'm tired of surviving. The line went silent for a moment. Then Claire whispered, I envy you. But envy didn't pay rent. One night, he sat staring at an eviction notice taped to his door. The landlord had finally run out of patience. His chest tightened. Maybe this was the universe laughing. He packed his things into a duffel bag, took his guitar, and walked out into the cold. He ended up at a small bar downtown, where a local musician he'd met online was performing. Ethan approached the owner. Do you ever let new people play? The man shrugged. Depends. You any good? Ethan smiled faintly. Guess we'll find out. He got 5 minutes on stage. Just 5. His palms were sweating, knees shaking. The microphone smelled like beer and cigarettes. He looked out 20 faces, half drunk, none interested. And yet, when he strummed the first note, something shifted. The world blurred away. He sang The Cost of Comfort, his voice trembling at first, then rising with the raw honesty of a man who had finally stopped lying to himself. By the end, the room was silent. Then applause. Not thunderous, not dramatic, but real. Genuine. One man shouted, play another. Another said, where can I find your music? That night, he didn't earn much, just $40 and a free drink. But when he stepped out into the freezing air, he felt richer than he ever had. The city lights no longer looked like walls, they looked like stars. Weeks turned into months. Ethan played every open mic he could find, coffee shops, parks, subway stations. His voice roughened, his hands calloused, but his confidence grew. He wasn't chasing fame anymore, he was chasing truth. One evening, while playing on a quiet street corner, a man in a leather jacket stopped to listen. When Ethan finished, the man handed him a card. Name's Ryan Keller. I manage indie artists. You've got something raw. Call me. Ethan laughed at the universe's timing. You serious? Ryan nodded. Comfort never made anyone worth remembering. Within a year, Ethan had a small but loyal following. His song The Cost of Comfort hit 50,000 streams, nothing viral, but enough to prove he wasn't crazy. Interviews followed. A podcast invited him to share his story. When asked what made him quit his job, he smiled into the microphone. "It wasn't courage," he said. "It was exhaustion. I got tired of paying the price for staying safe." But the real twist came later. One afternoon, as he packed his guitar after a show, a familiar voice called from behind. "Cole?" He turned. It was Hargrove, his old boss, dressed in casual clothes for once. "Didn't expect to see you here," Ethan said. Hargrove chuckled awkwardly. "Yeah, well, company's gone under. Layoffs. Market hit us hard. Guess your timing was better than mine." Ethan nodded quietly. For years he'd feared losing that job, yet here was proof that playing safe had no safety at all. Hargrove looked around the small crowd still lingering after the show. "You really chased it, huh?" Ethan smiled. "No. I stopped running from it." That night, Ethan wrote another song. This one wasn't about fear or regret, it was about freedom. He called it Uncomfortable Peace. Because that's what his life had become, not easy, not secure, but peaceful in its purpose. As his career slowly bloomed, he started speaking at local schools, telling students his story. One boy raised his hand and asked, "But what if I fail?" Ethan smiled gently. "You will. Probably a lot. But failure teaches. Comfort kills. Take your pick." Years later, sitting backstage at a packed music hall, Ethan picked up his old, chipped guitar, the same one from his apartment wall. A young musician approached him nervously. "Mr. Cole, can I ask something? How do you know when it's time to leave the safe path?" Ethan chuckled. "When you can't stand hearing your own excuses anymore." The lights dimmed, the announcer called his name, and the crowd roared. Ethan walked onto the stage, not as an office worker, not as a man surviving, but as someone who'd chosen the harder road and found himself on it. He looked at the audience and began softly, "This song is for anyone stuck between who they are and who they could be." Then he played the first chord of The Cost of Comfort. The light shimmered across thousands of faces, some smiling, some crying, all silent. The same silence that once haunted him now listened to him. As the final note faded, Ethan whispered into the mic. "Comfort will steal your dreams. But discomfort will give you your life." And for the first time, the man who once feared failure realized he hadn't escaped the storm. He'd learned to dance in it.